The arrival. The sleek, silver transport ship glided through the swirling purple nebula, its destination looming ahead, the imposing structure of the Galactic Academy of Medical Sciences. Inside the ship, Dr. Sarah Chen took a deep breath, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As the first human instructor invited to teach at the prestigious institution, she knew the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The Academy's massive docking bay opened like a maw, swallowing the transport ship. As the vessel touched down with a gentle hiss, Sarah gathered her belongings and steeled herself for what lay ahead. The airlock cycled, and she stepped out into a world unlike anything she had ever experienced. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors bustled about the docking bay. Some floated on anti-gravity platforms, others slithered across the floor, and a few even phased in and out of existence as they moved. Sarah's eyes widened, taking in the diversity of life forms around her. A tall, willowy being with iridescent skin approached her. Its voice resonated in Sarah's mind rather than her ears. "Greetings, Dr. Chen. I am Zixlara, your liaison. Welcome to the Galactic Academy of Medical Sciences." Sarah smiled, bowing slightly. "Thank you, Zixlara. I'm honored to be here." As they made their way through the sprawling complex, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the advanced technology surrounding them. Holographic displays flickered with incomprehensible alien scripts, and strange devices hummed with energy she couldn't begin to understand. "Your quarters have been prepared," Zixlara communicated. "You will begin instruction tomorrow in Lecture Hall 7. Your class consists of 30 students from various species across the galaxy." Sarah nodded, her mind racing with questions. "May I ask, Zixlara, why was I chosen for this position? Surely there are more advanced medical practitioners in the galaxy than humans." Zixlara's skin rippled with what Sarah assumed was amusement. "The Council of Elders believes that sometimes simplicity holds great power. Human first aid techniques are unique in their approach. We are curious to see how they may benefit our students." As they reached Sarah's quarters, a group of alien students passed by, their eyes, or sensory organs, fixed on her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Sarah heard whispers and mental projections, catching fragments of their thoughts. "Is that the human? So fragile-looking. What could it possibly teach us?" Sarah squared her shoulders, reminding herself why she was here. She had faced doubt before, but never on such a cosmic scale. The next morning, Sarah stood outside Lecture Hall 7, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. The doors slid open silently, revealing a tiered classroom filled with the most diverse group of students she had ever seen. As she walked to the center of the room, the chatter died down, replaced by an expectant silence. Sarah cleared her throat and began. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen from Earth, and I'll be your instructor in human first aid techniques." A tentacled being in the front row raised an appendage. "Excuse me, Dr. Chen, but why should we learn primitive human methods when we have advanced healing technology?" Sarah smiled, having anticipated this question. "An excellent point. While technology is invaluable, it can fail or be unavailable in critical moments. The techniques I'll teach you rely on basic principles that can be applied in any situation with minimal resources." A bulbous creature with multiple eyes blinked rapidly. "But humans are so fragile. How can your methods be effective for species so different from your own?" "That's where the beauty of these techniques lies," Sarah explained. "They're adaptable. The principles can be modified to suit different physiologies. By understanding the core concepts, you'll be able to apply them creatively in diverse situations." As Sarah began her lecture, she could sense the skepticism in the room. She decided to start with something simple yet dramatic. "Let's begin with a demonstration. I need a volunteer." The class hesitated, exchanging glances. Finally, a reptilian being with scales that shifted colors like a mood ring stepped forward. "Excellent," Sarah said. "What's your name?" "Krex," the being hissed softly. "Krex, I'm going to demonstrate a technique for stopping severe bleeding. Don't worry, we won't actually cause any injury. Sarah pulled out a small device from her pocket and activated it. A holographic simulation of a deep gash appeared on Crex's arm, oozing simulated blood. In a situation like this, the first step is to apply direct pressure to the wound, Sarah explained, pressing her hands firmly on the holographic injury. This helps to slow blood loss and allows clotting to begin. The class leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. Sarah continued, "If direct pressure isn't enough, we can elevate the limb above the heart to reduce blood flow to the area." She gently lifted Crex's arm, demonstrating the technique. The holographic blood flow visibly slowed. Finally, in extreme cases, we might need to use a tourniquet. This is a last resort, as it cuts off blood flow to the entire limb and can cause tissue damage if left on too long. Sarah quickly fashioned a makeshift tourniquet from a piece of cloth and applied it to Crex's upper arm. The holographic bleeding stopped completely. As she removed the tourniquet and deactivated the simulation, Sarah noticed the shift in the room's atmosphere. The initial skepticism had given way to curiosity and even a hint of respect. "These techniques may seem simple," Sarah said, addressing the class, "but they can mean the difference between life and death in an emergency." Throughout this course, we'll explore how to adapt these methods to different species and situations. As the lecture continued, Sarah found herself fielding a barrage of questions. The students, initially doubtful, now seemed eager to learn more. But Dr. Chen, a gaseous being, pulsed, its voice translated through a device. "What about species that don't have blood? How can we apply these techniques to them?" Sarah smiled. "An excellent question. While the specific techniques might differ, the principles remain the same. We'll need to identify the vital fluids or energies that sustain different life forms and learn how to manage their loss or disruption." As the class drew to a close, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment. She had made it through her first day, and while she hadn't won over everyone, she had at least piqued their interest. As the students filed out, Zixlara entered the lecture hall. "Impressive, Dr. Chen. The council will be pleased with your progress." Sarah nodded, but her attention was caught by a small group of students lingering near the exit. They were huddled together, whispering and occasionally glancing her way. She couldn't shake the feeling that not everyone was as impressed as Zixlara suggested. Over the next few days, Sarah settled into a routine. Her mornings were spent preparing for lectures, adapting her knowledge of human first aid to the myriad of alien physiology she encountered. In the afternoons, she taught, demonstrating techniques, and answering an endless stream of questions. While most of her students seemed to be warming up to her methods, Sarah couldn't ignore the undercurrent of resistance from a vocal minority. Led by a haughty, crystalline being named Jor, this group consistently challenged her teachings, often with thinly veiled disdain. "Dr. Chen," Jor's voice rang out during one particularly tense class. "While your quaint methods might work for humans, how can you expect them to be effective for beings so far beyond your comprehension?" Sarah took a deep breath, reminding herself to remain patient. "Jor, the beauty of these techniques lies in their adaptability. Let's take CPR, for example. While the specific motions might change, the principle of maintaining circulation remains constant across many species." She turned to address the entire class. "I challenge each of you to think about how you might adapt these techniques to your own physiology or to those species you're familiar with. Innovation often comes from applying simple principles in new ways." As the days passed, Sarah found allies among her students. Crex, the reptilian volunteer from her first class, became one of her most enthusiastic supporters. A group of amorphous beings who could reshape their bodies at will found human first aid techniques particularly intriguing, seeing potential applications in their unique abilities. Yet, the tension with Jor and his followers remained. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were waiting for her to make a mistake, to prove that humans had no place teaching in this advanced galactic institution. One evening, As Sarah was reviewing her notes for the next day's lesson, her door chimed. To her surprise, it was Krex, looking agitated. "Dr. Chen," Krex hissed urgently, "I need your help. There's been an accident in the xenobiology lab. Several students are injured, and our usual medical staff is off-world for a conference." Sarah's heart raced as she grabbed her emergency kit. "Lead the way, Krex." As they rushed through the corridors, Sarah's mind whirled with possibilities. This was the moment of truth, a chance to prove the value of her teachings in a real emergency. They burst into the lab, and Sarah's eyes widened at the chaos before her. Various alien students lay injured, each presenting a unique medical challenge. In that moment, she knew that everything she had taught, everything she believed about the universal applicability of human first aid, would be put to the ultimate test. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The first lesson. Sarah's heart pounded as she surveyed the chaotic scene in the xenobiology lab. Injured alien students were scattered throughout the room, each presenting a unique medical challenge. She took a deep breath, centering herself before springing into action. "Krex," she called out, "I need you to help me triage. We'll assess each patient and prioritize based on the severity of their injuries." The reptilian being nodded, his scales flickering with a mix of anxiety and determination. Together, they moved swiftly through the lab, checking on each injured student. A gelatinous being quivered in the corner, its usual translucent body marred by an angry red gash. Nearby, a silicon-based life form lay motionless, its crystalline structure cracked and dulled. In the center of the room, a gaseous entity pulsed erratically within its containment field, its usual rhythmic flow disrupted. Sarah's mind raced, adapting human first aid principles to these alien physiologies. She turned to Krex. "The silicon being is our priority. That crack could be life-threatening. The gelatinous entity is next, followed by the gaseous one." As they approached the silicon being, Sarah heard a familiar, scornful voice behind her. "And what do you think you're going to do, human? Your primitive methods can't possibly help here." It was Jor, the crystalline student who had been her most vocal critic. Despite the urgency of the situation, he couldn't resist the opportunity to challenge her. Sarah didn't bother turning around. "Jor, if you want to help, gather any medical supplies you can find. If not, please step back and let me work." She knelt beside the injured silicon being, her mind racing. The crack in its structure was severe, threatening to shatter the being entirely. Sarah remembered a lecture on silicon-based life forms and their similarities to certain Earth minerals. "Krex, I need you to find a bonding agent, something like a silicon-based epoxy if you have it," Sarah instructed. As Krex rushed off, she gently placed her hands on either side of the crack, providing support to prevent further damage. Jor watched skeptically as Krex returned with a strange, shimmering substance. Sarah carefully applied it to the crack, her steady hands guiding the bonding agent into place. "Now we wait," she said, her voice calm despite the tension in the air. The bonding agent should stabilize the structure, allowing for natural healing processes to begin. To everyone's amazement, the dulled crystal began to regain its luster. The crack, while still visible, no longer threatened to shatter the being. Without pausing to acknowledge the murmurs of surprise, Sarah moved to the gelatinous entity. Its body rippled with pain, the gash disrupting its usual fluid movement. "This is similar to a soft tissue injury in humans," Sarah explained to the growing crowd of onlookers. "We need to close the wound and prevent further loss of its internal substance." She reached into her kit and pulled out a specialized bandage. "This is a hydrogel dressing. It's flexible and can conform to irregular shapes while maintaining a moist healing environment." With gentle but confident movements, Sarah applied the dressing to the gelatinous being. The entity's ripples slowly calmed as the dressing took effect. "The dressing will help hold the entity together while it heals," Sarah explained. It's important to monitor for any signs of infection or adverse reaction. Finally, she turned her attention to the gaseous entity. Its erratic pulsing had slowed, but it was clear that something was wrong. "This is tricky," Sarah admitted. "We need to stabilize its containment field and then analyze its composition to see what's causing the disruption." She examined the containment field generator, quickly identifying a malfunction. With a few deft adjustments, she stabilized the field, allowing the gaseous entity to settle into a more regular rhythm. "Now we need to run a spectral analysis," Sarah said. "That will tell us if there are any contaminants or imbalances in its gaseous makeup." As the analysis ran, Sarah turned to address the gathered students. Many looked at her with newfound respect, while others, including Jor, still seemed skeptical. "What you've just witnessed is the application of basic first aid principles to diverse alien physiologies," Sarah explained. "The key is to understand the fundamental needs of each life form and adapt your techniques accordingly." The spectral analysis completed with a soft chime. Sarah examined the results, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There's an imbalance in its elemental composition," she announced. "We need to introduce a stabilizing element to help it regain equilibrium." Under Sarah's guidance, Chronicles carefully introduced the needed element into the containment field. Gradually, the gaseous entity's pulsing normalized, its swirling patterns returning to a healthy flow. As the immediate crisis subsided, Sarah took a moment to catch her breath. She looked around at the faces of her students, seeing a mix of awe, curiosity, and lingering doubt. "This," she said, gesturing to the recovering alien students, "is why we learn first aid. Technology can fail, specialized medical staff might not be available, but with knowledge and quick thinking, we can save lives." Jor stepped forward, his crystalline form shimmering with what might have been grudging respect. "I may have underestimated the value of your teachings, Dr. Chen. Perhaps there is something to learn from human methods after all." Sarah nodded, acknowledging Jor's words. "Every species, every civilization has something to contribute. That's the beauty of galactic cooperation. We learn from each other, combining our knowledge to become something greater than the sum of our parts." As the medical staff finally arrived to take over, Sarah found herself surrounded by curious students, eager to learn more about how she had adapted human techniques to their alien classmates. "Dr. Chen," Chronicles asked, his scales shimmering with excitement, "could you teach us more about how to adapt these techniques to different species?" Sarah smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Absolutely. In fact, I think it's time we took our lessons to the next level. Starting tomorrow, we're going to dive deep into xenophysiology and emergency response." Over the next few weeks, Sarah's classes transformed. No longer faced with skepticism and doubt, she found her students engaged and eager to learn. They worked together, humans and aliens alike, to develop new techniques and approaches to first aid that could be applied across the galaxy. One day, as Sarah was demonstrating a new technique for treating plasma-based life forms, she noticed Zixlara observing from the back of the classroom. The willowy being's skin rippled with what Sarah had come to recognize as approval. After class, Zixlara approached her. "Dr. Chen, the Council of Elders is most impressed with your progress. Your innovative approach to teaching has exceeded our expectations." Sarah felt a surge of pride, but also a sense of responsibility. "Thank you, Zixlara, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more we could do." Zixlara's mental voice took on a tone of curiosity. "What do you propose?" Sarah took a deep breath, realizing this was her chance to push for something bigger. "I think we need to establish a comprehensive, galaxy-wide first aid protocol. Something that combines the best techniques from all species, adaptable to any situation." Zixlara was silent for a moment, considering. "An ambitious proposal, Dr. Chen. It would require extensive collaboration and testing." "Exactly," Sarah said, her excitement growing. "And what better place to start than here, at the Galactic Academy? We have students from across the cosmos, each bringing their own unique perspective and knowledge. As they discussed the possibilities, Sarah could sense Zixlera's growing enthusiasm. By the end of their conversation, they had the beginnings of a plan to present to the Council of Elders. The next day, Sarah stood before her class, barely able to contain her excitement. "Everyone, I have an announcement to make. We've been given approval to begin work on a groundbreaking project, the development of a universal first aid protocol." The classroom erupted in a cacophony of excited chatter, translated through various devices into a mix of languages and mental projections. "This won't be easy," Sarah continued once the noise had died down. "We'll be pushing the boundaries of our knowledge, combining techniques from across the galaxy. But if we succeed, we'll create something that could save countless lives." Krex raised a scaled hand. "Dr. Chen, how will we account for the vast differences between species? Some of us breathe oxygen, others methane. Some have blood, others have plasma or other fluids." Sarah nodded, acknowledging the challenge. "That's where we'll need to get creative. We'll start by identifying common principles that apply across multiple species. Then we'll develop modular techniques that can be quickly adapted to specific physiologies." Jor, who had become one of Sarah's most dedicated students since the lab incident, spoke up. "We could create a classification system for different types of life forms. That would help first responders quickly identify which techniques to use." "Excellent idea, Jor," Sarah beamed. "We'll need to consider every angle, every possibility. This is where your diverse backgrounds and knowledge will be crucial." As the class dove into discussion, Sarah felt a sense of awe at what they were undertaking. This wasn't just about teaching anymore. They were on the cusp of something that could change the face of emergency medicine across the galaxy. Over the following months, the project consumed Sarah and her students. They worked tirelessly, conducting experiments, debating theories, and pushing the boundaries of their collective knowledge. There were setbacks, of course. Some techniques that worked brilliantly for one species proved disastrous for another. Cultural sensitivities had to be navigated carefully, ensuring that the protocol would be acceptable across diverse civilizations. But there were triumphs, too. A breathing technique developed for methane breathers was found to have applications for a wide range of gaseous entities, a method for stabilizing plasma-based life forms, through inspiration from both human blood clotting techniques and the natural defense mechanisms of a crystalline species. As word of their project spread, the Galactic Academy became a hub of medical innovation. Researchers and practitioners from across the cosmos sought to contribute their knowledge and learn from the emerging protocol. One evening, as Sarah was reviewing the latest draft of the protocol, she received an urgent message from Zixlera. "Dr. Chen, your presence is required immediately in the council chamber." Sarah's heart raced as she made her way to the imposing council room. Had something gone wrong? Was the project being shut down? As she entered, she found not just the Council of Elders, but also representatives from various galactic governments and medical institutions. Zixlera stood at the center, its skin shimmering with barely contained excitement. "Dr. Sarah Chen," Zixlera's mental voice resonated through the chamber. "Your universal first aid protocol has garnered attention far beyond the Academy. The Galactic Alliance has expressed interest in implementing it across all member worlds." Sarah stood in stunned silence, the implications of Zixlera's words sinking in. What had started as a simple teaching assignment had grown into something that could affect billions of lives across the galaxy. As the assembly began to discuss the logistics of galaxy-wide implementation, Sarah felt a mix of pride, excitement, and a touch of apprehension. The real test of their protocol was yet to come, and she knew that the eyes of the galaxy would be watching. But as she looked around at the diverse beings in the room, all united in their goal to save lives, Sarah knew that they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would show the galaxy the true power of cooperation, innovation, and the indomitable spirit of life itself. The unexpected crisis. The news of the Universal First Aid Protocol's potential galaxy-wide implementation spread through the Galactic Academy like wildfire. Sarah found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity, fielding questions from curious students, addressing concerns from skeptical faculty members, and coordinating with Zixlara on the logistics of expanding their project. Despite the excitement, Sarah couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease. The protocol was still in its early stages, and while it had shown promise in controlled settings, it hadn't been tested in a real large-scale emergency. She voiced these concerns to Zixlara during one of their planning sessions. "Your caution is admirable, Dr. Chen." Zixlara's mental voice resonated with a mix of reassurance and determination. "But the Council believes that the potential benefits outweigh the risks. We will, of course, implement the protocol gradually and monitor its effectiveness closely." Sarah nodded, not entirely convinced but understanding the need to move forward. "I just hope we're ready for whatever challenges come our way." Little did she know how soon those challenges would arrive. It was a typical day at the academy. Sarah was in the middle of a practical demonstration, showing her students how to adapt a tourniquet technique for species with multiple or non-standard limbs. Suddenly, the academy's emergency alert system blared to life, its piercing wail causing several students to flinch. Zixlara's voice echoed through the building, urgent and strained. "Attention all faculty and students. We have received distress calls from multiple sectors. A rare cosmic phenomenon has caused widespread disruptions and injuries across several star systems. All medical personnel and advanced students are to report to the Emergency Response Center immediately." Sarah's heart raced as she turned to her class. "This is it," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Everything we've been working towards. It's time to put it into practice. Remember your training, stay calm, and let's show the galaxy what we can do." The Emergency Response Center was a hive of activity when they arrived. Holographic displays flickered with incoming distress signals, each representing a different crisis unfolding across the affected star systems. Sarah quickly assessed the situation, her mind racing to categorize and prioritize the emergencies based on the Universal First Aid Protocol. Zixlara approached, its usually composed demeanor showing signs of stress. "Dr. Chen, we're facing multiple simultaneous crises. The cosmic phenomenon has caused everything from atmospheric disruptions to gravitational anomalies. We're seeing injuries and conditions we've never encountered before." Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. "All right, let's break this down. We'll form teams, each focusing on a specific type of emergency. We'll use the protocol as our foundation, but be prepared to adapt on the fly." She turned to her students, who looked both terrified and determined. "Krex, you'll lead the team handling atmospheric disruptions. Your experience with diverse respiratory systems will be crucial. Jor, your team will focus on gravitational anomalies. Your understanding of crystalline and silicon-based life forms will be invaluable there." As Sarah continued assigning teams and responsibilities, she felt a surge of pride in her students. They had come so far from the skeptical, doubtful group she had first encountered. Now, they moved with purpose and confidence, ready to face the unknown. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Sarah found herself jumping from crisis to crisis, advising her teams and adapting the protocol to meet each new challenge. In one sector, a planet's sudden shift in orbit had caused massive tidal disruptions, threatening aquatic species. In another, a spatial rift was causing dangerous molecular destabilization in carbon-based life forms. Through it all, the Universal First Aid Protocol proved its worth. Its modular design allowed for quick adaptations, and its comprehensive approach ensured that even in the face of unprecedented emergencies, there was always a starting point for treatment. But it wasn't perfect. Sarah and her teams encountered situations that pushed the protocol to its limits and beyond. In one harrowing instance, they faced a species whose neural pathways had been scrambled by the cosmic phenomenon, rendering all known resuscitation techniques useless. Sarah found herself working feverishly alongside Jor, whose crystalline nature gave him unique insights into the species' energy patterns. Together, they developed a new technique on the spot, combining principles from the protocol with Jor's innate understanding of energy flow. As the crisis stretched on, Sarah began to notice signs of fatigue in her students. The constant adaptations and high-stakes decisions were taking their toll. She knew she had to keep their spirits up, to remind them of why they were fighting so hard. During a brief lull, she gathered her teams. "I know you're tired," she said, her voice carrying across the busy response center. "I know we faced things today that we never could have imagined. But look at what we've accomplished. We've saved countless lives, pushed the boundaries of medical science, and shown that when we work together, there's no crisis we can't overcome." Her words seemed to reinvigorate the group. With renewed determination, they dove back into their work, tackling each new challenge with creativity and resolve. As the hours turned into days, the tide slowly began to turn. The number of new emergencies decreased, and reports of successful treatments started to outnumber the distress calls. Sarah allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. But the galaxy had one more test in store for them. Just as it seemed the worst had passed, an urgent message came through from a remote outpost on the edge of the affected area. A group of researchers, representing dozens of different species, had been caught in the heart of the cosmic phenomenon. Their distress beacon had only just managed to penetrate the disrupted space. The message was fragmented, but what came through was dire. Multiple severe injuries, unknown radiological exposure, and rapidly failing life support systems. It was a worst-case scenario, combining nearly every challenge they had faced over the past few days into one critical emergency. Sarah knew this would be the ultimate test of the universal first aid protocol and of her team's abilities. She turned to her students, seeing the exhaustion in their eyes, but also the unwavering determination. "This is it," she said, her voice steady and confident. "Everything we've learned, everything we've developed, it all comes down to this. We're going to save those researchers, and in doing so, we'll prove once and for all the value of what we've created here." As they prepared for the rescue mission, Sarah felt a mix of emotions: fear, excitement, determination. She knew that the eyes of the galaxy would be on them, watching to see if this human-inspired protocol could truly make a difference in a crisis of this magnitude. The rescue ship, equipped with the latest medical technology and staffed by Sarah's most skilled students, launched into the chaotic space surrounding the research outpost. As they approached, the true scale of the disaster became apparent. The outpost was barely holding together, its structure warped by gravitational forces and bombarded by exotic particles. Sarah's voice came through clear on the communication channel. "Remember your training. Stick to the protocol, but don't be afraid to innovate if you need to. We're writing the book on crisis response right here and now." As the rescue team docked with the failing outpost, they were met with a scene of chaos. Injured researchers of various species lay scattered throughout the facility, each presenting a unique medical challenge. The air was thick with unknown contaminants, and pockets of spatial distortion threatened to tear the very fabric of reality. Sarah watched from the command center as her students sprang into action. Orcs, using techniques developed for atmospheric disruptions, quickly established safe breathing zones for the most critically injured. Jor, drawing on his experience with gravitational anomalies, worked to stabilize the areas most affected by spatial distortions. But it was in treating the injured that the true value of the universal first aid protocol shone through. Sarah's students moved from patient to patient, quickly assessing and categorizing injuries based on the protocol's guidelines. They adapted techniques on the fly, combining knowledge from various species to create treatments that addressed the unique challenges posed by the cosmic phenomenon. In one corner, a student used a modified version of the silicon bonding technique to stabilize a crystalline being whose structure had been severely compromised. Nearby, another team applied principles developed for plasma-based life forms to treat a gaseous entity suffering from molecular destabilization. As the rescue progressed, Sarah found herself filled with a sense of awe and pride. Her students, once skeptical of human methods, were now seamlessly blending techniques from across the galaxy, their actions a testament to the power of cooperation and shared knowledge. Hours passed, each moment a battle against time and the harsh realities of space. But slowly, surely, the tide began to turn. One by one, the injured researchers were stabilized and evacuated to the rescue ship. The failing systems of the outpost were shored up, buying precious time for the remaining rescues. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last researcher was brought aboard the rescue ship. As they disengaged from the outpost and began their journey back to the academy, a cheer went up from the rescue team. They had done it. Against all odds, they had saved every single life on that doomed outpost. Back at the academy, Sarah waited anxiously for the rescue ship's return. As it docked and the doors opened, she was met with a sight that brought tears to her eyes. Her students, exhausted but triumphant, helping the rescued researchers to safety. Aliens of all kinds, supporting each other, their differences forgotten in the face of shared survival. Zixlara appeared beside her, its mental voice filled with a mix of awe and respect. Dr. Chen, what you and your students have accomplished, it's beyond anything we could have hoped for. The universal first aid protocol has proven its worth 1,000 times over. Sarah nodded, her voice thick with emotion. It wasn't just the protocol. It was the spirit behind it. The idea that by working together, by sharing our knowledge and strengths, we can overcome any challenge. As the rescued researchers were taken to the medical bay for further treatment, Sarah gathered her students. Looking at their tired but proud faces, she felt a surge of emotion. "What you've done today," she said, her voice carrying across the docking bay, "is nothing short of miraculous. You've not only saved lives, but you've also shown the entire galaxy what can be achieved when we put aside our differences and work together. This is the true power of the Universal First Aid Protocol, not just the techniques and knowledge, but the spirit of cooperation and innovation that it represents." The students cheered, their varied voices, squeaks, and mental projections blending into a cacophony of triumph and unity. In that moment, Sarah knew that they had achieved something far greater than just creating a medical protocol. They had taken a significant step towards a more united, compassionate galaxy. As the celebration continued around her, Sarah's mind was already racing with new ideas. The crisis had revealed gaps in their knowledge, areas where the protocol could be improved and expanded. But it had also shown the incredible potential of their work. With renewed determination, Sarah looked out at the stars visible through the docking bay windows. The galaxy had thrown its worst at them, and they had risen to the challenge. Whatever came next, she knew they would face it together, armed with knowledge, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of crisis. The Universal First Aid Protocol was more than just a set of medical techniques. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of life itself, a beacon of hope in a vast and often dangerous cosmos. And Sarah Chen, the human teacher who had started it all, knew that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey. The aftermath. In the days following the cosmic crisis, the Galactic Academy of Medical Sciences buzzed with an energy unlike anything it had experienced before. The successful rescue mission and the undeniable effectiveness of the Universal First Aid Protocol had catapulted the Academy, and Dr. Sarah Chen, into the galactic spotlight. As Sarah walked through the corridors, she could feel the change in the air. Students from species she had never encountered before approached her, eager to learn about the protocol. Faculty members who had once viewed her human techniques with skepticism now sought her out for consultations. The entire atmosphere of the academy had shifted, infused with a new sense of purpose and unity. Zixlara found Sarah in her office, poring over data from the crisis. The willowy being's skin shimmered with what Sarah had come to recognize as excitement. "Dr. Chen," Zixlara's mental voice resonated. "The Council of Elders has convened an emergency session. They wish to discuss the wide-scale implementation of the Universal First Aid Protocol across the Galactic Alliance." Sarah looked up, her eyes wide. So soon. I thought we'd have more time to refine the protocol, to address the gaps we discovered during the crisis. Zixlara's form rippled in what might have been a shrug. The success of the rescue mission has accelerated everything. The Council believes that the benefits of immediate implementation far outweigh the risks of delay. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. I understand their eagerness, but rushing this could be dangerous. We need time to analyze the data, to make improvements. Which is why, Zixlara interrupted, they want you to lead the implementation process. You'll have the resources of the entire Galactic Alliance at your disposal to continue refining and improving the protocol as it's rolled out. The magnitude of the offer hit Sarah like a gravitational wave. This wasn't just about teaching anymore. This was about reshaping emergency response across the entire galaxy. I'm honored, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. But I can't do this alone. My students, the beings who were there on the front lines during the crisis, they need to be part of this too. Zixlara's mental voice carried a note of approval. The Council anticipated your response. They've already approved the formation of a diverse task force under your leadership. Over the next few weeks, Sarah threw herself into the work of preparing for the galactic rollout. She assembled a team that represented the best and brightest from across the Academy. Beings who had proven themselves during the crisis and shown an aptitude for the kind of adaptive thinking the protocol required. Krex, with his expertise in respiratory systems, became the lead on adapting the protocol for gaseous and liquid-breathing species. Jor, whose crystalline nature had provided crucial insights during the rescue mission, headed up the division focusing on energy-based and silicon life forms. As they worked, Sarah was constantly amazed by the insights her alien students brought to the table. Ideas that would never have occurred to her human mind flowed freely, each new perspective adding depth and nuance to the protocol. One day, as they were grappling with a particularly thorny issue involving chronosynclastic species, beings whose physiologies were entangled with multiple timelines, a new student named Ixel made a breakthrough. Ixel, a being composed of pure quantum probability, had been quiet throughout most of the discussions. But now, its form shimmering with excitement, it spoke up. What if? Ixtel's voice echoed with the uncertainty of 1,000 possible futures. We approached the problem from a nonlinear perspective. Instead of trying to stabilize a single timeline, we could create a treatment that exists across all potential timelines simultaneously. But the most important thing to remember is this. The true power of the Universal First Aid Protocol lies not in its techniques, but in the spirit of cooperation and shared purpose that it represents. It is a reminder that in moments of crisis, our differences fade away, and we are united by our common desire to preserve and protect life in all its wondrous forms. As Sarah concluded her speech, the chamber erupted in a cacophony of cheers, mental projections of approval, and various alien expressions of enthusiasm. The rollout was officially underway. In the weeks and months that followed, reports began to flood in from across the galaxy. The protocol was being implemented on countless worlds, adapted to meet the needs of species Sarah had never even heard of. There were challenges, of course, misunderstandings, cultural clashes, unexpected physiological reactions. But for every setback, there were a dozen success stories. On a gas giant in the Orion Arm, the protocol saved an entire colony of methane breathers from a runaway chemical reaction in their atmosphere. In the dense jungles of Proxima Centauri, techniques adapted from the protocol allowed first responders to stabilize a group of photosynthetic beings affected by a sudden solar flare. But perhaps the most profound impact was not in the lives saved, though those numbers were staggering, but in the way the protocol brought diverse species together. Across the galaxy, beings who had once viewed each other with suspicion or indifference were now working side by side, united in their commitment to preserving life. As Sarah read through the latest batch of reports in her office at the Academy, she felt a sense of awe at what they had accomplished. The Universal First Aid Protocol had become more than just a medical breakthrough. It had become a symbol of galactic unity, a tangible reminder of what could be achieved through cooperation and shared purpose. A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Zixlera, its form rippling with barely contained excitement. "Dr. Chen," the being's mental voice resonated with joy. "I have news. The Galactic Alliance has just announced the establishment of a new institution, the Interstellar Institute of Emergency Response and Cooperation, and they want you to be its first director." Sarah sat back, stunned. "Me? But surely there are more qualified." "No, Dr. Chen," Zixlera interrupted. "There is no one more qualified. You have shown us all what is possible when we work together. This new institute will ensure that the spirit of the Universal First Aid Protocol continues to spread throughout the galaxy." As the implications of this new role sank in, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined when she first arrived at the Galactic Academy. But as she looked out her window at the star-filled sky, she knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers beyond imagination. But armed with knowledge, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of cooperation, Sarah knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Universal First Aid Protocol had started as a simple teaching assignment. Now, it had become a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy, a shining example of what could be achieved when beings of all kinds came together in pursuit of a common goal. And for Sarah Chen, the human teacher who had started it all, the greatest adventure was just beginning. The final test. 5 years had passed since the implementation of the Universal First Aid Protocol, and the galaxy had transformed in ways Sarah Chen could never have imagined. The Interstellar Institute of Emergency Response and Cooperation, IIERC, had grown from a fledgling organization into a cornerstone of galactic society, with outposts on thousands of worlds across hundreds of star systems. Sarah sat in her office at the IIERC headquarters, a space station orbiting a neutral planet at the heart of the Galactic Alliance. The walls were adorned with holograms showing real-time data from emergency responses across the galaxy. It was a far cry from her humble beginnings as a human teacher at the Galactic Academy. A gentle chime interrupted her musings. "Director Chen," her eye assistant's voice resonated through the room. "The participants for the Galactic First Responder competition have arrived." Sarah smiled. The competition had been her idea, a way to showcase the advancements in emergency response techniques and to push the boundaries of what was possible. Teams from across the galaxy would face simulated crises, testing not just their knowledge of the protocol, but their ability to adapt and innovate in the face of the unknown. "Thank you, Araya," Sarah replied. "I'll be right there." As she made her way to the welcoming ceremony, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. The Universal First Aid Protocol had evolved far beyond its original scope, incorporating techniques and knowledge from thousands of species. It was no longer just about medical emergencies. It now encompassed responses to environmental disasters, technological failures, and even temporal anomalies. The observation deck was filled with beings of all shapes, sizes, and compositions when Sarah arrived. She recognized some familiar faces: Krex, whose respiratory expertise had saved countless lives, and Jor, whose crystalline insights had revolutionized energy-based healing techniques. They were now respected instructors at the IIERC, passing on their knowledge to the next generation of first responders. Sarah stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of countless eyes and other sensory organs upon her. "Welcome, esteemed participants, to the first Galactic First Responder competition," she began, her voice carried across the room and translated into myriad languages and thought patterns. "You represent the best and brightest from your respective worlds, united in your commitment to preserving and protecting life in all its diverse forms." As Sarah continued her speech, outlining the competition's structure and goals, she felt a swell of pride. This gathering was a testament to how far they'd come. Beings who might once have been at war were now working together, sharing knowledge and skills in the pursuit of a safer galaxy. Remember, Sarah concluded, the true measure of your success will not be in winning, but in how well you embody the spirit of cooperation and adaptability that is at the heart of our mission. May you all learn from each other and push the boundaries of what we thought possible. The competition began the next day, with teams facing increasingly complex simulated emergencies. Sarah watched from the control room, marveling at the ingenuity on display. A team of aquatic beings from a water world used modified versions of deep-sea pressure techniques to stabilize a silicon-based life form suffering from extreme gravitational stress. A group of energy beings, in collaboration with a hive-mind insectoid species, developed a new method for containing chronospatial rifts. As the competition progressed, however, Sarah began to notice something unusual. The simulations, designed by an advanced AI to be unpredictable and challenging, were becoming increasingly erratic. Scenarios were shifting mid-simulation, presenting the teams with situations that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Sarah called out to her AI assistant, "Run a diagnostic on the simulation systems. Something's not right." Before ARIA could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The holographic displays in the control room flickered and distorted, showing chaos erupting across multiple decks. Director Chen, Aria's voice came through, tinged with an urgency Sarah had never heard from the AI before. "We're detecting multiple anomalies throughout the station. The simulations, they're becoming real." Sarah's mind raced. How was this possible? The simulations were supposed to be contained, mere holograms and force fields. But the readings were undeniable. Somehow, the imagined crisis had manifested in reality. "This is not a drill." Sarah's voice boomed through the station-wide communication system. "All personnel and competition participants, this is now a real emergency. Implement crisis protocols immediately." As reports flooded in, the true scale of the disaster became clear. A simulated plasma storm had materialized in the engineering section, threatening to overload the station's power core. A temporal anomaly from another scenario had appeared in the medical bay, causing dangerous time dilations. And in the main atrium, a simulated hostile species had somehow gained physical form, endangering hundreds of beings. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. This was the ultimate test, not just of the universal first aid protocol, but of everything they had built over the past 5 years. "ARIA, patch me through to all team leaders," Sarah commanded. As the connections were established, she addressed the gathered first responders. "I know this is not what any of us expected, but this is why we're here. Everything you've learned, everything you've trained for, it's all led to this moment. Work together, adapt to the situation, and remember, we're stronger united than we ever were apart." With that, Sarah left the control room. She knew her place wasn't behind a desk, but on the front lines with her teams. As she made her way through the chaotic corridors, she saw the true spirit of the IIERC in action. Beings from across the galaxy, many of whom had been competing against each other mere hours ago, were now working in perfect harmony. In the engineering section, Sarah found Jor leading a team to contain the plasma storm. The crystalline being's natural affinity for energy manipulation was proving crucial. "Dr. Chen," Jor's voice resonated over the roar of the storm. "We've managed to stabilize the containment field, but we can't hold it forever. We need to find a way to dissipate the energy safely." Sarah's mind raced, recalling a technique they'd developed for dispersing charged particle clouds on gas giants. What if we reversed the polarity of the station's deflector shields? We could create a dispersal pattern that would spread the plasma harmlessly into space. Jor's crystalline form shimmered with excitement. "Brilliant. We'll need to modify the shield emitters, but it could work." As Jor's team got to work, Sarah moved on to the medical bay. The temporal anomaly had grown, causing dangerous fluctuations in the flow of time. She found Krex there, working with a team of chronosynclastic beings to stabilize the affected patients. Director, Krex hissed, his scales flickering with stress. We're losing patients to temporal fading. Their life signs are phasing in and out of our time stream. Sarah remembered Ixfel's breakthrough from years ago. We need to think non-linearly, she said, instead of trying to anchor them to our timeline. What if we create a treatment that exists across all potential timelines simultaneously? Krex's eyes widened with understanding. Together, they worked to adapt the temporal stabilization techniques they'd developed, creating a field that would keep the patient's phase locked across multiple timelines until the anomaly could be resolved. Finally, Sarah reached the main atrium, where the situation was most dire. The materialized hostile species, crystalline beings that fed on bioelectrical energy, were wreaking havoc. Teams of first responders were struggling to contain them while evacuating civilians. Sarah spotted a familiar face in the chaos. Ixfel, the quantum probability being whose insights had proven so valuable over the years. Ixtal, she called out, we need your help. Together, Sarah and Ixfel analyzed the situation. The crystalline hostiles seemed to phase in and out of reality, making them difficult to contain or combat. Their quantum constructs, Ixtal's voice echoed with the uncertainty of 1,000 possible futures. They exist in a superposition of states, only collapsing into our reality when they feed. An idea struck Sarah. Then we need to force them into a permanent collapsed state. If we can generate a field of focused quantum observation, we could lock them into a single reality state. Ixtal finished, its form shimmering with excitement. Working quickly, they repurposed sensor arrays to create a massive quantum observation field. As the field activated, the hostile beings solidified, becoming vulnerable to conventional containment methods. Hours passed as the teams worked tirelessly to resolve each crisis. Slowly but surely, they brought the situation under control. The plasma storm was safely dispersed, the temporal anomaly was collapsed, and the hostile beings were contained and studied, yielding valuable insights into quantum biology. As the all-clear signal finally sounded throughout the station, Sarah gathered with the first responders in the now-safe atrium. Looking around at the exhausted but triumphant faces, she felt an overwhelming sense of pride and awe. What you've accomplished here today, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the crowded space, is nothing short of miraculous. You faced a crisis beyond anything we could have imagined, and you rose to the challenge. Not as competitors, not as individuals, but as a united force for good in this galaxy. She paused, looking around at the diverse gathering of beings. This is the true power of what we've built together. Not just a protocol, not just an organization, but a spirit of cooperation that can overcome any obstacle. Today, you've shown the galaxy what we're capable of when we work together. As the crowd cheered and celebrated, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Zixlera, the willowy being who had first welcomed her to the Galactic Academy all those years ago. Dr. Chen, Zixlera's mental voice resonated with a mix of awe and affection. When we first brought you here, we hoped you might bring some fresh perspective to our medical teachings. Never in our wildest dreams did we imagine this. Sarah smiled, feeling the weight of the journey she'd undertaken. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it? Zixlera's form shimmered with what Sarah had come to recognize as joy. The Council of Elders has been in contact. They believe that what happened here today, this unprecedented crisis and our response to it, marks a turning point for our galaxy. They're proposing the formation of a new initiative, one that goes beyond emergency response. What kind of initiative? Sarah asked, intrigued. One that would use the principles we've developed: cooperation, adaptability, shared knowledge, to tackle the biggest challenges facing our galaxy. Climate change on a cosmic scale, diplomatic crises between vastly different species, even the existential threats that lurk in the darkness between the stars. They want you to lead it. Sarah felt a moment of vertigo as the implications sank in. From a simple human teacher to the leader of a galactic initiative, it seemed impossible. And yet, looking around at what they'd accomplished, at the bonds forged between beings from across the cosmos, she knew it was the next logical step. "I'll do it," Sarah said, her voice firm with conviction. "But not alone. We'll build a team, drawing from every corner of the galaxy. Together, we'll face whatever the universe throws our way." As Sarah looked out at the stars visible through the atrium's vast windows, she felt a sense of excitement and purpose unlike anything she'd experienced before. The crisis they'd just faced was just the beginning. The true tests, the true adventures, were yet to come. But with the unity they'd forged, the knowledge they'd gained, and the indomitable spirit of cooperation that now burned bright across the galaxy, Sarah knew that they were ready. Ready to face the unknown, to push the boundaries of what was possible, and to write a new chapter in the grand story of life in the cosmos. The Universal First Aid Protocol had started as a simple idea. Now it had become the foundation for a new era of galactic cooperation. And for Sarah Chen, the human teacher who had sparked this cosmic revolution, the greatest journey was just beginning.